Bloomberg Business Week Vietnam, and you're watching an interview series of leaders and experts that we conduct alongside the Vietnam Future Economy Summit 2025 right here in Ho Chi Minh City. And sitting next to me now is Mr. Curtis Chin, former U.S. Ambassador to ADB, Asian Development Bank, Senior Advisor of Milken Institute. Hello.
Hello, Gigi. So great to be here back in Vietnam. What an amazing place it always is. Even more amazing each time I come. But delighted to be here with you.
Wonderful, and welcome to Bloomberg Business Week Vietnam. Yes. So to kick off our conversation today, I would like to ask you that, from your opinion, what makes the creative sector an increasingly significant contributor to GDP in emerging markets?
Well, you know, when we think about the creative economy, people often think about Korea, right? K-pop, K-drama, now K-beauty, K-food, you know, it's K-everything. And so one question and one lesson from Korea is that a country like Vietnam, a country like Thailand, but just any country can also think through how they can use their own people's minds and innovations and creativity to create jobs and build the economy. You know, so much of Asia, including Vietnam, has developed partially by being less expensive places to build things. So factories are cheaper, you know, so many young people here, you know, a great labor force here. And so I think a lesson from Korea, but from the US and other places as they moved up the value chain, is use your minds too, to create new products, new services. And so when I think about Korea, I ask myself, you might even ask yourself, Gigi, can Vietnam be the next Korea? And of course, I say absolutely yes.
As you just say that this creative economy has a great contribution to the value chain worldwide, right? So do you see creative products and cultural content also could becoming like strategic economic pillar for the countries looking to diversify beyond traditional exports?
Absolutely. So, you know, strategic in many ways. Strategic because you got to diversify where you're creating jobs, where you're creating income. But strategic also because so much of it is kind of like the real content that drives soft power. So, you know, you look at these polls about what do they think of Korea now, and you ask people all around the world, it's hip, it's dynamic, it's beautiful, but it's being shaped probably by what they see, which is no longer ancient footage from the Korean War. Just about the wonderful products, cell phones and cars that Korea is making. It's about those people on that K-drama. It's about the people you listen to or that you see online. And so it's strategic in many ways. So if you think about what do people think about Vietnam? In the old days, you know, so long ago, maybe 50 years ago, people would think about footage of sadly war and all. Maybe that's what they think about when they think of Vietnam because they haven't been blessed to be able to come to the Bloomberg Business Week event, but really to see all the dynamism that is going on here. And so when I think about the creative economy, I think the Vietnams of the world have to also recognize, but can it be at that level where, like, if I'm streaming, I want to watch a Vietnam film. If I'm listening to music, do I want to hear a Vietnamese girl band or boy band? Clearly, you need the ecosystem that supports a creative economy, and that needs to include intellectual property rights protection. So I think you will know better than me. What is the situation of the legal system, the regulatory system in Vietnam, that if there's some amazing Vietnamese filmmaker, there's some amazing Vietnamese singing group, they will make money based on that film. They will make money based on their music. It won't be all stolen or copied because there isn't strong enough intellectual property rights protection. Another question when you think about ecosystem is government treatment on things like taxation and investment. Are there incentives for outside filmmakers to film here? So I think there are lessons that Vietnam can take from a Korea, but also from markets around the world. And Vietnam has to figure out its own way forward to shape it. I had a conversation, I think last year, with a Korean ambassador. They said there's so many theories, but of course, tax incentives, ecosystem, intellectual property rights protection. The terrible pandemic happened. People are stuck in their homes and they want content to watch on TV. They had that moment. Or right then they could not go to concerts, but the BTSs, the Blackpinks of the world, they had already built relationships with fans. So when you're stuck in your home, it was very normal to like look on your phone and feel a connection when you could no longer go to a concert. So there were some fundamental things that were already happening in Korea that with the, the good luck and the bad luck that this lockdown happened was taken advantage of that to grow further. So when you think about Vietnam and you think about things like intellectual property rights protection, tax incentives, an ecosystem that supports young people. Because my Asian parents are like, I don't want you to be an actor. You're going to be unemployed.
Yeah, like being a doctor.
You got to be a
Yeah, it's doctor, right?
So many amazing Vietnamese doctors and engineers. Where are those rising Vietnamese actors and musicians? So a nation like Vietnam has to think, but is there an ecosystem? So it means not just government, but also what do parents, what do friends and others, are they supportive of this entire sector? And I think in Korea, there's a whole industry now that's developed of a path into K-pop, a path into K-drama, but it is so competitive and a lot of factors come into play. But go for it because there is opportunity there in Korea. I hope we can say the same in every nation because again, the creative economy needs to be part of a flourishing, robust, diverse economy, in my view.
Do you think that Vietnam could become the next V-pop, the next V-dramas, V-culture, like Hallyu?
Hallyu is like a Korean word for like the Korean wave.
Yeah, that's right, that's right.
Content. So certainly Vietnam has that potential. But then the government, to its strategic thinking, kind of almost like guidance that it provides, has to also think through: does it want a flourishing creative economy? And then what constraints will they put in? Korea was not a really robust democracy like it is today. Korea had a lot of censorship. A lot of that censorship ended, so Koreans are now totally criticizing the government. Every country will find that balance, but clearly when there's less censorship, there's more creativity because I'm going to use art or music or sports or whatever. Also, I'm going to use that platform to convey other messages. So at the Milken Institute, it's this nonprofit, nonpartisan economic think tank. We're trying to encourage partnerships. We're focused on, creating more prosperity, more meaningful lives for people. I've been so blessed to focus on this creative sector. And I feel like each country will need to find its own way forward, including Vietnam. Begin with baby steps. And who knows what will be that breakout film or group or personality that will help drive change here. And so for me, I feel that Vietnam today is so welcoming, right? Including like foreigners, but importantly, a foreign investment, of foreign partnerships, where other countries around this region of the world have in a way become less welcoming as they've looked more inward. Vietnam is also a relatively young country. So everyone knows, Korea is aging, Japan is aging, even Thailand is aging. And that young, dynamic population is a terrific asset for Vietnam. But how do you give them the opportunity here so they all don't think, no, I'm going to move to Los Angeles or I want to move to Australia? There's always that for many people. But are there opportunities here in Vietnam? And at the Milken Institute, we're saying absolutely, but you might have to do things here as a government, as a business person, as someone in civil society, to help create a more welcoming environment for success to be done right here at home. But I know Vietnam can do it. But again, as you know, next year there's some government changes happening. And whenever there's a change, I think we always have to be optimistic that new wonderful things might unfold. But clearly it's going to be up and down, but hopefully up and down, upward. As this nation moves forward.
Yeah, you're just right, because right now the Vietnamese government has a lot of policies to welcome the young overseas Vietnamese to come back to Vietnam and contribute to develop our country. Yeah, so for the next question would be like, recently we're talking a lot about BRICS.
The BRIC nations.
The BRIC nations, right? How do you think that Vietnam could join those big BRICS?
So, so take a step back. There was an economist with Goldman Sachs named Jim O'Neill, and he popularized this notion of the BRIC nations: B for Brazil, R for Russia, I for India, C for China. And he said these big nations are going to help drive the global economy. But then BRIC itself began to grow. South Africa joined in, and now there's actually a grouping of nations. It's like countries from all over are joining. But that's a gathering, an association in a way of nations. But the concept of a brick is this idea that any nation can also help drive economies because they're so economically successful. So even when you think about brick nations now, maybe they aren't exactly how Jim O'Neill thought they would be in terms of impact and size. When you think about a Russia versus a China. So I popularized this notion of what I call the little brick. So many people, like if I visit their country, like when I visit Vietnam, people like you might say, oh, can Vietnam be a brick nation? I say, well, you can always join that grouping. But I think you're asking a different question, which is, can we be seen as one of those big, powerful economies driving the world, driving change? And I say, yes, you can, Vietnam, but you have to worry about the little brick. And the little brick is not a nation. The little brick is little b for bureaucracy, little r for regulation, little I for inequality, and little c for corruption. And so all of that exists in every nation, whether the United States or even Singapore. There's some level of each of it, And so the question now for Vietnam is, if we are to move forward, where do we stand when we think about how bureaucratic things are? And it's really connected to the little r of regulation. There's some great regulations unfolding because business people want to know how things are. They want some stability, and regulation helps that. But do regulations become overly burdensome? I is inequality. The reality is that always some people will get rich first. That's natural. But when is the gap so big that it undercuts the overall growth of a nation? And then the little c, corruption. I would argue, no one wants corruption. But the reality is that even the United States, but it's legal. It's called lobbying. So it depends how you define corruption. But of course, everyone would say, we should have less corruption. And so you look at these measures. So what are those little things, that little b, little r, little I, little c, that really cause the biggest challenge for Vietnam moving up to that next amazing level where people will say, oh, when I think of ASEAN, I think of Vietnam as the powerhouse. I think right now, people think of Indonesia just because it's just the biggest economy in Southeast Asia. But then who next? Should it be, I always think about Indonesia and Vietnam. It's up to the people of Vietnam to move that forward and to tell the stories that get people to think about all the dimensions of an evolving Vietnam. But we're so delighted to think through, how do we use our platform to get people to learn more about Vietnam? Because there might be business opportunity. It might be a place that you want to visit as a tourist. It might be an idea, traditional medicine or something that's coming out of here that we can take to the world. So the burden is also on Vietnam to tell its story and be that partner of choice when we're looking where to invest in Southeast Asia.
One of the recent Vietnamese conference now about economics that conducted by a lot of senior advisors for the Prime Minister here in Vietnam. We want the world, when think of Vietnam, they would think about drone, about the low attitude economy. Yeah, so do you think that it could be like going to that way?
But people already have some ideas of what it is when they think about Vietnam. And so if you want them to change, you gotta, give them evidence, give them an experience. And so right now, I think younger people will be like, Vietnam food is so amazing. They think about food. But then how do we turn Vietnam food, V-food, into an amazing, not just soft power, but an industry? And so when you think about the creative economy, sometimes people don't realize one of the biggest parts of the creative economy is gaming, animation, gaming, bigger than music, bigger than TV and film. Can Vietnam be a powerhouse with its great creative talent in terms of programming, of animation? I don't know. But Vietnam can certainly change the world. I think Vietnamese people have it in them to move forward. But that's where we need leadership too, and not just government, business, civil society, to be examples for young people.
Thank you so much, Mr. Curtis Chin, for your wonderful insights and also a lot of, I think, really optimistic about the Vietnam's future economy.
Here is a soundbite for you. I am optimistic about Vietnam, and I know that Vietnam won't disappoint me, but it's up to the Vietnamese people to move this amazing place forward to even a higher level. So delighted to be with you.
Okay, so once again, thank you so much for spending your time with Bloomberg Business Week Vietnam.
Thank you. It was such a delight to be here, and I look forward to coming back.
Okay, I will see you.
Thank you.